wave at you. I know that seems so unprofessional. My friend Lisa Guerrero, big star on Inside Edition, and I'm very close. I've been, blessed with friendships with people like Deborah Norville, and they don't wave. They just start talking about something important, and maybe in another iteration of my life I will do that. Hopefully, I'm not going to start my TED talk with a wave. I'm not going to stand on stage and go, hey, can you believe this? I'm doing a TED talk. Woo! There was a time when football players always looked into the camera and said, hi, mom. I can't tell you the last time I saw an NFL player look into the camera and say, hi, mom. It was like a thing when I was a kid. So I've had a lot going on. I mean, last Saturday night, we did a half-hour show, and we did it from the green room. Of the Colorado Springs. We were on Academy Boulevard, and there's so much to talk about. Just what it felt like to do 4 live shows in a brick and mortar comedy club with social distancing and waitresses with masks on, and the whole thing was just a hot ball of weird. And then fans that I've known for 20 years. I got to believe that happiness spikes your immune system. And maybe I took a couple of risks, but I wasn't going to elbow bump somebody who drove from Aspen to Colorado Springs to see me. I just didn't have it in my heart to say, oh, I think you might be, infected. They took everybody's temperature coming into the club, which is another weird thing. Everywhere you go now, they hold something up to your head. Or I stayed in a casino which was packed, by the way, in Reno on the way home. And you have to walk through like a gun, they have the metal detector. Well, now they have this little machine that scans you and tells you your temperature. Thank you for saying I look good in pink. Thank you, Margaret Moore. I saw you pop up. She's part of the 330 gang. If you guys want to know a little more about the 330 gang, here it is. Every day at 3:30, I go live on Facebook, Monique Marvez official fan page. And the thing about that is I started it on Wednesday, March 25th. I'd been home from New Zealand for a week and a day. I flew home on St. Patrick's Day, a day that I actually lived twice. I lived it once in Australia and then on a flight. And then it was early morning when I landed at LAX. So I lived St. Patrick's Day of this year twice. And let me tell you, St. Patrick's Day is always a weird day for me. Number one, I was raised Irish Catholic, and St. Patrick is my least favorite saint. I'm not going to, diss him because he drove the snakes out of Ireland, but I'm not entirely sure that there were ever snakes in Ireland. Like, how do we know that to be true? But here's what I do know is that St. Patrick's Day is always an S show in every city. Like in San Antonio, basically the Riverwalk becomes the world's largest urinal. In New Orleans, forget about it. It's after Mardi Gras and everybody's looking for a reason to keep the party going. In Savannah, Georgia, Savannah, I think, has the biggest St. Patrick's Day outside of, New York, for some weird reason on the Riverwalk. And I have an aversion to, anything that centers around heavy duty drinking. I know the 4th of July, people get drunk and light themselves on fire, but for some reason, it doesn't seem to be the mission. It's like it happens. We were burning some hot dogs. We were cooking some weenies. And before we went to see the Blue Angels or whatever we did on the 4th of July, which has some sentimental attachment, we had a couple of beers and we lit ourselves up with a sparkler or something. But St. Patrick's Day is a weird day because it's very much a countdown to, 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila floor. And so the fact that I was in Sydney, Australia, and Australians drink, do not kid yourself. They drink like they're going to be shot in the morning. And the fact that St. Patrick's Day was sort of on the bubble. Is it going to be canceled? Is it not going to be canceled? I walked around Sydney seeing all the decorations and knowing that it was most likely going to be canceled, and the incredible disappointment. And that was sort of the introduction of me knowing that these were going to be weird times when I was in a country full of hard drinking it was a penal colony, like the descendants of whoever. And And then they were being told like St. Patty's Day is on hold. And then I flew to LAX and it was a whole nother ball of weirdness. And then it took me about a week to get over the jet lag and anxiety, because for a week, every time I opened my email, it was a cancellation of a gig, a corporate gig, a cruise gig, a comedy club gig. And the money was just, leaving my life at an alarming rate. And then I just settled into this weird free fall. And I realized, again, for the 1 millionth time, that a problem that can be fixed by writing a check is not a problem. And none of my problems had anything to do with anything outside of the financial. I was and am in perfect health. I was and am living in my dream apartment. I was and am driving a car that makes me happy. I was and am planning to spend time with my nieces. I was and am, making the best of it. And on top of all of that, I've completely pivoted. And when, I know that some of you get irritated with my sort of secular religion. I tell you all the time, I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. I believe in something bigger than me. But you put up with me, and I appreciate that. And I always tell people, if you have an issue with the word God, drop an extra O in. Nobody ever has an issue with good. That I know to be true. So, I realized that there were a whole lot of things in my life that I did not want to do. And one of them was to figure out, the internet machine. And I call it the internet machine as a joke, because I actually coined the term ITARD to describe myself. Because anything that has a plug, if it isn't a toaster or a milk frother or a toaster oven, I don't microwave anything, or a crock pot, sends me into convulsions. I love my computer, love it to pieces, but I always say it's sort of like adopting a Chinese baby that I totally adore, but we speak a different language. And all of a sudden, resistance is futile. It's sort of like it says, it's biblical. Resist ye not evil. But computers are not evil. And as soon as I embraced that I was going to turn my mind, my Klieg light of attention, onto the pivot, everything changed. And I jokingly say, and this is so sacrilegious, but it gets the point across, that God is a drug dealer. You slide him the cash, he'll slide you the drugs. You make a decision that you're going to take one step forward in the right direction, and call it whatever you want, the universe, God, providence, karma, whatever word makes you comfortable. It will step towards you. It will fill the void. It will help you. And I say this to people because I say, if you believe in something bigger than you, and I'm not asking you to, I'm just saying if you do, because most Americans, an alarming statistic of people, even if they're agnostic, say, yeah, I don't think I'm the end all be all. There's something bigger than me. I said, okay, if you're going to take the time to fill your brain with the possibility of something bigger than you, why don't you just take 5 steps closer to it and believe in its benevolence? Like, why not? As long as we're making stuff up, as long as dream Sundays don't have any calories, why not get the wet nuts? You know what I mean? Like, who doesn't like? And I laugh every time I say that, because I dated an Orthodox Jew from Brooklyn, and I had never heard the term wet nuts until we went to an ice cream parlor where you could build your own sundae in Coral Gables, Florida. It's not there anymore. It was on Miracle Mile. I know a lot of you from Miami listen to the show, so you'll laugh because you'll remember the place. And he was, chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream and banana, he was going to town. It was really more banana split than sundae. But then he asked the waiter in a thick Brooklyn accent if he could just put wet nuts on it. And I was like, oh, I can picture. This was pre-teabagging becoming a thing that people used in the vernacular. But I just kind of pictured, a waiter playing over his sundae. But I digress, as I so frequently do. If you're going to believe in something bigger than you, why not believe that the thing that's bigger than you actually wants and is conspiring for your good? So you know, as delusional as I may appear to so many of you, and I don't have a problem with that. I go the distance. Like I'm buying the whole thing. I'm like, it's bigger than me. It likes me. It prefers comedians. It's taking care of my ass. It's going to make sure that my car doesn't overheat. Like I'm just heaping on the wet nuts. And so, you know, it's been an interesting ride since, you know, March Saturday. That first Saturday when I came home was our first live stream, and Stanton, you know, producer Stanton was there to walk me through that because that was a hot wheel of brie. And here we are. We've done 17 shows, one podcast, and one re-record. And I haven't taken a Saturday off since I came home from Australia. And just as I never took a day off when I was on KFI because I only worked one day a week. But here's the point. Then I had some pre-records. We're going into, you know, 17 weeks of which the only pre-record was the podcast. And we ran one rerun. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that I showed up and you showed up. I had nothing. And I had a placeholder on YouTube, and producer Stanton stepped in and said, let's do this. And now there's, you know, 4,000 of you almost that listen, and, you know, listen, watch, send me love, send me comments. And that would have never happened. I would have probably hired some college student. I would have never embraced you except for my inborn compulsion to connect with you. And with an inability to connect with you in clubs, I was cornered. I was cornered like a raccoon in an apartment into learning how to do YouTube, how to be effective. And then what happened is that Grace stepped in, and all of my content, and I'm telling you this for a reason, because I cannot put it on my page as it's proprietary to the producer, Scott Montoya, my dear friend. But LOL Flicks released Snoop Dogg Presents the Bad Girls of Comedy and Latin Divas of Comedy and Not Skinny, Not Blonde, which were all filmed many years ago at this point. And, you know, it ended up that a whole new group of people that never laid eyes on me found me on YouTube and embraced me. And a lot of good things happened. And I say that, some of you have heard me say this before, but I believe that good news bears repeating. So frequently we repeat the negative. You know, what am I going to do? Oh my God, I don't have a job. How am I going to make a living? And I get that. I get that that's what people say. And I empathize and sympathize. I just don't want to be a part of that I don't know what to do club. Because when I don't know what to do, believe you me, if I sit down for half a minute with an open heart and say, what would be the logical thing to do? And it's embrace, for me, things that take up a lot of time and brain space because I have both right now. I don't have to think about traveling or packing or who's going to watch my dog or, you know, I don't have to think of any of that. All I have to do is tackle, you know, go on YouTube. I remember years ago, I knew that the world was going to change because I was dating a man whose family lived in outside of Walnut Creek in a tiny town called Clayton. And his parents still read the newspaper, like that printed thing that the internet is on, that piece of paper they print the internet on. And they were talking about this thing called the Khan Academy that had started in Contra Costa County, the Contra Costa Times, as opposed to Silicon Valley. And it was this guy whose last name is Khan, Kahn, who had decided to teach his niece, I think it was math, over the internet using YouTube. And it turned into a thing. And then he had gotten a $100,000 grant. And that's what I was reading about probably almost 10 years ago. And I remember thinking that the Khan Academy, I'm one of those people that identifies, I get like an intuitive vibration that says, you know, follow that cab, you know, run through that open door. And when I saw the Khan Academy, I was like, this is amazing. What an amazing use of the internet. This is so cool. So what I've done is I've gone back to that sort of tingle twinkle and thought, well, now you don't have to, you can Khan Academy anything. So little by little, day by day, tutorial by tutorial, blessed phone call from producer Stanton and Tony, who I stole from KFI, who still films my podcasts and helped me with so many other things, including figuring out how to sound, like I'm supposed to sound, because sound is so important. And all of you know that I'm a music fanatic. It's great to have a great video, but if I'm not clear and you can't hear me, my intentions will be garbled. So, pretty much between me, Stanton, and Tony, we get it to you in the very best possible way. And how blessed am I that I have people that didn't say, like, you're on your own, kid. They were like, no, you've got something to say, and we're here to help you. So in the time since we've been hanging out together, the YouTube channel's been built, and according to the analytics, it's many, many thousands of hours that we've spent together. And I'm monumentally grateful for that. It also drew in brick and mortar situations, in that I got to do something in Provo that I can't tell you about yet. And I have another thing that, I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill all of you, and that's just a lot of people. And the last thing that I can finally tell you about, and we'll post it, is that August 20th is the official air date for my HBO Max special. And I'll tell you a little something about goodness, is that, HBO is the gold standard. I've been blessed. I'm grateful for every opportunity I've gotten. But I mean, I started on HBO home box office / the movie channel in the late 70s. My friend Tana Morris, who I'm still friendly with, I went to Humble High with Tana. Tana had HBO at her house before anybody else did. She had good family. And we would go after school and watch movies at Tana's house. And it was like a big deal, because we could, basically we just watched Grease. But, still the fact that we'd go home from school and have a snack, they always had great snacks at Tana's house. And she was a beauty queen, and is still a remarkably beautiful woman. We actually did our high school reunion a few years ago, and she's still beautiful. And it's amazing how, life changes so many things. I admire Tana for so many accomplishments. And at the time, she had a room full of trophies, and she was in my drama class, and she was beautiful. And that was back in the day before they had fake tans and spray tans. She used to actually have this light bulb that she would clamp onto the edge of a table and lay under. She had a tanning light bulb, which was like a mini tanning bed. And so Tana would tan while we would talk and be friends. And she won everything, Miss Junior Texas. This sounds a little bit prurient, but it's not. I remember how excited she was when she won Miss Big Thicket, which evidently is a piece of Texas, but it sounds very much like a European waxing center situation. But that all being said, HBO was the gold standard, and continues to be exciting. And when I got the green light for my HBO to participate in the 20-year anniversary of the Latino Comedy Festival and be part of this special with great people, Angela Johnson, who's the Korean nail lady on YouTube. Many of you know Angela as being a former Lakers girl and the Korean nail lady, but she's actually a terrific individual and very, very talented. She was the hostess, and that's going to air August the 20th, and I'm stoked about it. And I actually now have gotten to the point where I can tell you, and I can put links, and I can post invitations, and I'm building a website, and it should be ready at least in its most minimal form by then, because when Not Skinny Not Blonde was on before YouTube, when it aired on Showtime the first time, it changed my life. It's what landed me the KFI gig. The program director, Robin Bertolucci, saw me, and Neil, who's, I don't even know what his title is. Let's just say, like, great guy at KFI. I think he's done everything you could possibly do. He also does the Jesus show. I don't think I'm ruining anybody, like revealing Santa Claus or anything. But Neil Saavedra spoke up on my behalf, and the next thing you know, I'm on KFI, the gold standard of talk radio in the Western United States. And that all happened because of Not Skinny Not Blonde. So during COVID, while everybody's home and this special is coming out, I'm being menaced And I say that with a smile on my face. I'm being menaced with any number of possibilities that could happen. And, it's interesting how I now have friends calling me saying, how did you do it? And I laugh because I did it the way I've done everything, just because I decided. I decided that it needed to be done. And then it got done. And I'm still doing it. And I feel wonderful because everybody loves new, even when you're a little bit afraid of new. Don't be in such a hurry to get through the scary part. You remember early on in your relationship where all you worried about was if they liked you, and then you would get sick to your stomach at the thought that they didn't like you, and then they would call you and you were so excited and happy, sort of Freud's pleasure principle, you can only be as happy as you've been sad, you can only go as high as you've been low. This whole new relationship that I'm having with all of you, I'm still on wet silly legs. It's very new to me. I know I'm going to run fast and I know I'm going to be a winner, but I'm not in a hurry. I don't want this part to not be thoroughly enjoyed. I want this to feel like that nervousness of when I was an open micer and I would write material for every Thursday night. I'd write a new 3 minutes, and the other comedians were impressed because they did the same 3 minutes until it was perfect. I had a new 3 minutes every Thursday, and I didn't even realize that was unusual. And I remember when the booker said, would you like to open for Adam Leslie? That was his name. He's passed on now. But she said, I would like you to work with Adam in Key West. And I remember, it wasn't Key West, it was actually Key Largo. But I remember the fact that, part of it was that I had a car and I could pick him up at the Marriott and drive him down. But I said, well, I'm an open micer. And she said, Monique, you have 3 minutes every Thursday. String together 5 Thursdays, you have 15 minutes. That's all I need. And I was so nervous. I was so very nervous. And we were driving down and he had a cassette. And it was the first time I ever heard Tom Waits. And he put Tom Waits in my cassette player. At the time, I had a Lincoln Mark IV, I think. It was a vintage Lincoln, with the tire on the back. And it was beautiful. It was white with a blue pinstripe, and it was called the Bill Blass edition, after a very prominent American designer of the 70s named Bill Blass. And the seat belts had little anchors on them because it was like total Americana, like Martha's Vineyard. And I bought it from a guy. I think I paid $2,500 because I had a high-paying day job, and I just loved that car. That car's name was Mark. I always name my cars. So that was named Mark, which is appropriate for Mark IV. So and everybody loved it. They'd come out of the comedy club and say, hey, somebody from Batavia, Ohio, thank you for saying hello. I've been to Ohio many times. I've never been to Spain, but I kind of like the music. But I have been to Batavia. So back to Mark and Adam Leslie. All the comedians loved my car and thought it was the coolest. And I picked up Adam and I was driving him to the gig, and he popped, Tom Waits in, and it was that pleasure principle. He said, I like to hear very moody, sort of not sad, but thought-provoking, dramatic music before a comedy show. And I had never heard anything like Burma Shave or any of, I'd never heard anything like Tom Waits. And I liked it. And it put me in an amazing frame of mind. And my very first set where I got $50 to do 15 minutes, I crushed. And I was so happy. And I was a little less nervous the next time. And by that New Year's, I was able to host a show. So I'm not in a hurry to get to the point where I'm not nervous or where everything comes easily or, whatever. I'm not in a hurry for that to happen. I'm perfectly happy being, apprehensive or thoughtful, mindful of what's coming next. It doesn't come easy yet. And I like that. I'm not in a hurry for that to be behind me because I've worked so hard on so many different things. And when that part's behind you, now I know, because life is cumulative, that you miss it. You miss that nervousness. You miss that excitement. So I'm asking you right now to think about, in the space where you are, in your home, in this situation, you know, what what would you do if you could do anything? What would you do? Like, what would you do? This is it. This is what I'm doing. And it's going well. And I've organized my house, and I've it's been exciting. Now, one of the things that I want to ask you, then sorry about the noise. As I say, I'm at my mom's and there's people coming and going. But I don't think it's terribly obvious that they're trying to be thoughtful and careful. By the way, behind me, I've been here before, some of you have seen, is me. That's a picture my mommy has in a silver frame. And then here's a picture of my family. I'll try to, the light's not helping me, but there it is. And you can, that's me as a teenager right here, thinking that I look real cute. I'll get it. Okay. That's me. And then that's a real orchid. It's not a fake. And this is my niece's cap from her high school graduation. She actually, I've shown you this before when she was at my apartment, but it bears repeating for some of the new people, that she decoupaged onto the top of her cap images that mean something to her. Her mother is Eastern European. This is the flag of her mother's country. She has an eagle. She has the Golden Gate Bridge. And she put the flag of Puerto Rico, which is part of our family heritage. And I'm very proud of her. And she's a great kid. And this is a beautiful, I actually gave her the plate holder because I wanted her to have the opportunity. I'm making a mess of this, but I wanted her to have an opportunity to display this because I'm proud of her. And she's, my nieces are the light of my eyes, which is why I'm still in San Francisco, because the opportunity to spend time with all three of them presented, and I wasn't going to pass it. Okay, there, I got it to not fall down again. So my question to you guys is, and I wrote myself a bunch of notes. There's a song by many people. It was written by Chris Christopherson. And a lot of people don't know that Chris Christopherson is, because I don't think you lose it when you graduate, a Rhodes Scholar. Just think about that. A Rhodes Scholar. Now, there was actually a country in Africa called Rhodesia. It's not called that anymore. I don't know the new name. I don't know a lot of the countries, forgive me. I know, Malawi and Zimbabwe, and I know some of, obviously South Africa. I don't know what Rhodesia turned into, but that's where Rhodes Scholars come from. Can you imagine somebody being so rich? I mean, that's how things used to be, where, that whole paradigm of sort of imperialism and territorialism and saying like, oh, you're autonomous kind of sorta, but we're going to kind of keep an eye on you, sort of like the British and India. For those of you who have seen Gandhi and the Star of India, the big diamond that I believe Queen Victoria started off the Star of India. But what I'm saying is that that's not the world we live in anymore. It's just not. It's not about territory. It's about a meritocracy. It's about ideas. It's about the best idea wins. And as much as we as Americans don't really cherish the idea of globalization, and believe me, I'm not a socialist and I'm a capitalist, but I call myself a compassionate capitalist, because it can't just be bottom line. Today in San Francisco, I went to a little shop because there's a perfumer in San Francisco that makes amazing perfume. My personal scent, if you ever smell me, I'll tell you what it is. It's called Field Notes from Paris. And it's a company here in San Francisco that makes small batch perfume that's amazing. And I discovered it in this tiny little store that's owned by two sisters who are as nice as they can be. And the store is called Curiosities. And the last 2 years for my birthday, and I did it early because my birthday's not till next month, I buy myself a bottle of that perfume. It isn't cheap at all. And I can buy it on the internet. And if I register with the website of the perfumer, I can get 20% off. And that's fine. But I feel like I want to walk into a small brick and mortar store that's doing the best it can to survive during COVID and give them my money. You know, the 20%. See, that's what I talk about, being a compassionate capitalist. You know, as much as we complain about this country taking over or that country taking over, I've been alive long enough to remember that we were the people who sold, you know, Rockefeller Center to the Japanese. I mean, there's a whole movie called Rising Sun. I think Sean Connery's in it. You know, we sold things. You know, you can't just march into other countries and buy things. They won't sell them to you. Americans can't own property in a lot of places. We can live there, we can rent, we can lease, we can stay, but they're not selling us. An American can't say, hey, you know, Jeff Bezos can't walk over to China and say, I'm the richest man on the planet. I would like to buy the Forbidden City. Like, I'm pretty sure China would tell him to, you know, F off. So, you know, we have done some things that I'm hoping we can analyze while we're at home, and we're becoming neighborhood people. We're becoming neighborhood people because we don't want to go far, and we want to stay safe, and we want to be healthy. So while I'm visiting my mother, I went to this little neighborhood near her that I always go to, West Portal, and I went to the Starbucks, which is where you guys saw my 330, was in front of the Starbucks in West Portal. And I went to Curiosities, and I went to the GW Boutique, which is not George W. Bush, it's Goodwill, but they call it the GW Boutique because it's the nicest Goodwill in the country. And what they do is they farm out everything that's designer or high-end or particularly aesthetically pleasing and beautiful, and they put it in this gorgeous boutique called the GW Boutique. And it's not as cheap as a regular Goodwill, but you don't have to farm through tons and tons of stuff. And what you do get is exceptional. I bought a Lululemon full-length, you know, zip-up, all-weather anorak with a hood for $50, and it was effectively new. You could tell it had barely been worn. And I bought a designer dress with tags for $14.99, which I very much like. So, you know, I went in and I gave money to these people because we as Americans have gotten to the point of deferred gratification. And I think with COVID, it's gotten worse because of safety, where with all of the Amazon deliveries and, you know, the big box stores, I think that as much as we want to keep the mom and pop stores, we're unwilling to inconvenience ourselves or pay a few cents more for that warmth, for that energy, for that currency. Some things are more cash than cash. And the response to me buying the perfume and the woman's response, you know, when I told her I would never buy it online, even during a pandemic, I'm always going to walk into your store. As long as you're here, I'm here. And I think that that's sort of the theme for me during this, is that I want to be present. I don't want to sit in it and wait for it to pass. I don't want to sit there and think I'm waiting for herd immunity or I'm waiting for a vaccine. I'm waiting. Deferred gratification in the worst possible way. We should be using deferred gratification in other ways. We're using it in ways where we're just wasting time binge watching things and overeating and you know, when people say killing time. And I feel like it's just the opposite for me. I want to be so present. I want to make the most of this time. I want to enjoy the newness of a lot of these experiences. I want to embrace that this is some part of the new normal. Like even when we have a vaccine, this is the way it's going to be for a little while. And I'm not only getting used to it, it's something that I realized that in the embracing of it and in the, walking the walk, or as Gandhi would say, being the change, I've had some very wonderful experiences where people have sought me out that I knew from high school. And because people have more time to sift through their Facebook feed or say, I wonder what so and so's up to, and then look for so and so. Evidently, I've been a lot of people's so and so. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful when somebody that you cared about and maybe fluttered through your mind pops up and says, you've been on my mind. It's a great feeling. So I want to talk a little bit about living in the new now. And I've told you what I'm doing, but getting back, because you think that I forgot, but I didn't, to, Chris Christopherson being a Rhodes Scholar. He wrote the song, Me and Bobby McGee. And it was, a lot of people have sung it, everyone from Willie Nelson to Janis Joplin and in between. And, one of those lines that sticks with you, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Think about, maybe you're in a position where you feel, I've lost my job, I've lost a portion of my identity, I've lost my stability, maybe you've lost to some degree your peace of mind. So what difference does it make now? What difference does it make now if you say, you know what? I'm going to go on the internet and I'm going to Google tango lessons, and I'm going to figure out how to mirror my phone to my TV, and I'm going to tango or Zumba or learn French or anything else. We're all in some ways free of a lot of things. We're free of social obligations. How wonderful is that? That you now have an excuse to not get together with people that were already on the bubble before COVID. I had a gentleman that I knew, and we were, for lack of a better term, threatening to have a long-term relationship. We were rattling the chains of like, is this the ghost of the future? And because of COVID and because of the way I've pivoted and embraced something, it became very, very obvious to me that if this is the way it's going to go down, if this is the world we live in now, no, I don't want that. I don't want that relationship with that man. And I didn't have to end it. I just had to not make an effort at all. The excuse was in place. And, it was interesting because I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think that I should, because why not? Why not? In that, although obviously I'm in a physical location, whether it's San Francisco or Denver or Provo, Utah, and this person is in another location, they were honest enough and kind enough, and I respect it, that when I said, please, don't text me personal or romantic messages anymore. That's not where we're at, and it's not where we're going. Everything has kind of leveled off, and it's here, and it's going to stay here. And I wish you the best in finding someone to go to another level with. And the person was nice enough to say, you know what, I feel very strongly, and I really can't believe I'm saying this. I think you're going to have to block me because I don't know that I can help myself. And I said, well, you're only the second person I've ever blocked. And the other was a weird cousin who used to post political stuff in capitals on my page and drink like he was going to be shot in the morning. I said, oh, okay, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you knowing enough about who you are and how you conduct yourself. And I blocked him. And then he popped up on Facebook Messenger and said, I think you're going to have to do it here too. And I did. And this was somebody that I've known a long time. And oddly enough, I so respect that they knew themselves enough, but more importantly, that they knew me enough to say, please, I'll be okay with it. I think you're going to have to block me. So that happened last week. And that happened because of the world we live in. That happened because the new normal. That happened because I shifted. That happened because I'm embracing now and the future. I'm not hunkering down like a fireman under those fire blankets waiting for the fire to pass over me. Because this isn't a fire passing over me. This is a thing that has happened, that has accelerated so many other things that were probably going to happen anyway. I don't know how many of you are in my industry, but I've always had this weird tango dance with representation because I'm not the kind of talent that needs to be babysat or told what to do. So in my entire career, I've never had an agent or a manager. I've only had an entertainment lawyer because technically they're supposed to get you work. Technically, they're only supposed to charge you. But I've heard so many horror stories, and I've heard of people losing work because the agent played hardball and then never even telling the talent that the offer was made. And believe me, I've heard a lot. And having an agent, this is what I equate it to, or a manager, is to me the equivalent of being adopted as a fully grown adult. Like it's basically somebody saying, I can handle your affairs better for you than you. And I get where some of them have value, and I know that a lot of artists are not comfortable dealing with their own things, but that's never been me. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because, once again, my instincts have prevailed. Last week, the big talk in Los Angeles was that CAA, which is a very important thing, I'm pretty sure it was CAA. I'm 99% sure it was CAA. Let go of 90 agents. And I believe, don't quote me, I haven't looked it up in Variety. I just got a text from a friend in the biz saying that 90 agents had been let go and 234 employees. Because that's the world we live in. It accelerated any fat that needs to be trimmed off the bone going into the future, trimmed off the steak, is being trimmed fast and hard. And because of social media, I've landed several very nice gigs, brick and mortar and Zoom, through people just reaching out to me. And I feel like when you decide that you want something to happen, somehow, some way, that person finds you. That's what Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist and the Pilgrimage are all about. Two very, very, very popular books. They're really about having things show up. When you, call it The Secret, call it super obvious stuff we all know, call it, my personal favorite, which I talk about all the time, is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. It was written in 1910. It has nothing to do with how to make money. It has everything to do with being in alignment with your gifts, in alignment with your desires, in alignment with who you really are and what you're really made of. And I'm telling you to look me, I'm trying my level best to look at what I believe to be the camera, but I'm still not used to doing this. But I think I'm looking right into the lens as opposed to when I look at myself on the screen. And then it's different than when I look at the lens. Memorize this face. This is the face of a very, very happy girl. Because what I call the pause for the cause, what I refuse to call a pandemic or being on lockdown, it's like prison. Think about who we are and what we're being asked to do. We're being asked to wear a mask and stay home as much as we can. That's what we're being asked to do. We're not hiding in an attic. We're not Anne Frank. We're not a 17-year-old girl who's praying in World War I for her 18-year-old boyfriend who's in open trench warfare and breathing mustard gas. You know, these things happened 100 years ago during the first big pandemic. We're not World War II. You know, we're not 20 years old waiting, and some poor guy who maybe is wondering if his Dear John letter didn't arrive, and when he comes home, his girlfriend's going to be with somebody else. We're not England during the massive Hitler bombings. You know, stay calm. You know, that's not us. We're being asked to be mindful, to be clean, to wear masks, to stay home. I can do this. And it's during the time of the internet when we have every opportunity to learn and grow and use this time to develop a side hustle, because we now live in a meritocracy where the best idea wins. You know, I read an article in People magazine. I have a ton of content that if I don't get to it this Saturday, I will. I'll get to it because it's kind of timeless stuff. It's not like there's a lot of new news going on. If you're avoiding politics, pretty much there's, you know. But the woman who, for whatever reasons, decided that she needed to invent poopery, you know, like it's the simplest thing. I know. I feel silly even talking about it. But some woman figured out scientifically that if you put a film on water, that smell won't come out. And she invented a spray so that, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little bit kidney shy and I'm not one to use the bathroom in mixed company. And the idea that you can travel with a spray that can save you all that trouble and you don't have to light a million matches and play your, you know, loud music on your phone is very heartening. And she's very, very wealthy. Very, very wealthy. And I knew a girl personally who adopted twins from an Eastern Europe, you know, Eastern Bloc, maybe Romania. And the children were severely malnourished. And she put this product together called Nutso, which is like peanut butter on steroids with chia seeds and, you know, all this like massively nutrition-rich compound. It's called Nutso, Nutzo. And they have chocolate Nutso and one that's mostly like peanut butter. And she was a salesperson at KFMB when I was on Jack FM in San Diego. Her name is Danielle Lavosi. And she adopted these boys, and out of the sheer necessity of wanting to create something that they would eat that would build them up, she created this product, and now it's in Whole Foods. And it's not cheap, but that's my sister-in-law taking out the garbage. But, you know, every time I go to Whole Foods and I see Nutso, you know, even though it isn't cheap, I buy it because A, I know it's incredibly nutritious. B, it's super tasty. And 3, it proves to me that it can be done. And she didn't build a side hustle during COVID. She built a side hustle because she had these 2 little boys that needed something. So I circle back around to, you know, living in the new now and pivoting. I read an amazing article that, you know, I'm just going to touch on, which is, you know, I email stuff to myself because I have 2 phones so that I hate the waste of paper. When I was on the radio, we used so much paper. And here's a really great story that I love, okay? I'm just going to read you the headline. 90-year-old grandfather, okay? This was on today.com. I get information from the Today Show, from stories they do. 90-year-old grandfather comes out as gay, searches for long-lost love, okay? 90. His name's Kenneth Phelps, and he's proud to be gay, even though it took him a lifetime to be able to say so. And he's finally opening up, and he told this whole story of how he went and looked for somebody he knew years and years ago. And it's a beautiful story. And, you know, it's just as sweet as it can be. He's a Colorado resident, and during the past few months in quarantine, he decided to start writing a memoir, one that couldn't be complete without revealing his sexual orientation. In 1942, when I was 12, I realized I was gay. How cute is that? 1942. My mother was born in 1942. As a child growing up in a strictly religious household in Kansas, he felt unable to express that to anyone or to pursue a relationship. And he thought it would cost him. And so the secret part of his life remained a secret even after he joined the Navy and met a man named Philip, who he fell in love with and devoted 2 years of his life to. So there you have it. The Village people were onto something when they used to sing in the Navy. What tore them apart was Phelps himself, who, following the church services one Sunday, realized he couldn't reconcile his love and his faith. In an interview years later, he went on to marry a woman. He had a daughter. He got divorced. He remained in the closet. His daughter came out to him as a lesbian in 1995. And one day he was talking to his daughter and he just said, you know what? I'm going to tell you a story about a man named Philip. And now that his daughter knew the truth, he decided to tell everyone. He went on Facebook. He showed an old picture of himself. Strangers offered to find Philip for him. And there you have it. So, you know, that's what he's doing with his time. A 90-year-old grandfather is using this time to find someone that he loved in the Navy all those years ago. And, you know, whatever you feel, whatever your beliefs are, you know, in my mind, it's being who you are is the most important thing. It is the most important thing. And it's never too late, ever, 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 to be completely authentic and in alignment with the desires of your heart. Now, his happened to be personal. It happened to be sexual orientation. He lived a full life, but not in the way that he wanted. And it's never too late. By the way, the story doesn't tell what happened, but I'm going to follow up on it and see if he ever found Philip. But even if he didn't, what a wonderful search. What an amazing way to spend your time. I was, you know, very heartened by that. One of the things I want to touch on before we, you know, I can't believe how fast the time goes. And I thought I was going to do more than talk about Mr. Phelps, who's 90 years old. Hang on. By the way, there's because they can update things on websites. At the very end, it says that that people did find Philip and that he had passed, and that was a real blow to Phelps. I know what you're thinking. Just cut it out. It's not that kind of show right now. I'm sorry I didn't have the chance to say goodbye, but he has had the chance to inspire other generations to start living their life authentically. And I say this because I feel like I myself, I always jokingly say that being a comedian is a little bit like being gay, and that, you know, your parents say they'll love you anyway, but you're not going to have a life like everybody else. You're not. I mean, I'm not married. I don't have children. I don't know what the future holds for me. But I'm in San Francisco because I do know that I have a brother. I have two wonderful brothers, one that I'm very close with and one that in a weird way I'm actually closer to, because he was my first brother. You know, he's the middle child and all that implies, but he was my first brother. And I say in a weird way, he was the first person that I fell in love with. You automatically love your parents, but I don't know that people automatically love their siblings. But I did love my little brother, JC, to the point where my grandfather had to build me a bench that I could stand on and look into the crib, because I would climb his crib like a monkey just to look in at him. And my parents were terribly afraid that I was going to topple the crib. So my grandfather, who was a sort of amateur carpenter, built me this beautiful, actually it was a little storage bench because the lid opened so you could use it as a sewing kit or whatever. But that little green, it was green. It was because they just used leftover paint and he had painted something else green. So I had this little green bench with a lid that lifted that was tall enough that I could step on it and look at my little brother. And I know that I have two brothers. I know that I have three nieces. I know that I have a wonderful sister-in-law. I know that my mother is still with me and in good health and getting used to me. I'm not sure she's completely embraced it. I'm going to stay this way. I think she has hope that I might behave in a different fashion. But you know, I'm wearing her down, and I say that because, yeah, thank you for the laugh, because there's a lot more humor in that statement than I care to admit. But I wanted to do a couple of things. Those of you that are part of my 330 gang, I wanted to thank you for showing up. I committed to 40 days because 40 days was, to me, biblical. And I felt like we were in this sort of invisible flood. So I committed to 40 days. And now we're at 3 times that. It's over 120. And I'm still going because I said I would stop when the numbers dwindled. And they haven't. They haven't dwindled at all. And I'm grateful for that. And in fact, today is the birthday of a mega fan. So if you're in the 330 crew, I'm going to wish him another happy birthday tomorrow, because today was a little bit short, since I always do a short Saturday 330 because of the live stream. And his name is Felipe Navas, Navas. And Felipe, last May the 4th, I had a gig in Miami, actually in Broward County. And I walked into the venue, and it was a very weird feeling because it was a venue at a track called Gulfstream that used to be a horse track, but now they just do certain betting, and they have the big screens. And it was, if you recall, last year was the year that the Kentucky Derby was bizarro because they called the winner back. You know, they changed the winner after the fact. Like, that's so bizarro. So there was a very weird feeling in the room because they had just watched the Kentucky Derby, which on the East Coast is the actual time, because Louisville is the farthest west point of East Coast time. So it was in real time, and it was done, and it was time for the comedy show, and the room was peculiar, and the people that had watched the race were filtering out as the comedy show people were filtering in, and this adorable, delightful man came running towards me, and he said, "I promised myself if you were anywhere nearby that I was going to come to see you." And I flew standby from DC. He lives in Washington, DC. And, you know, he's like, "It's so hard to figure out where you are. You have a crappy website and you never post on social media." I think you can get the point of what I'm saying here. And somehow you mentioned something. Somebody else posted a flyer for this gig and tagged you, and I figured it out at the last minute, and I flew standby. And I felt a little bit indicted by my lack of making it easy on people to embrace me, but maybe that speaks to a bigger part of my personality than I was willing to admit prior to this. And he was so happy to see me and just told me what a huge fan he was, and he went on and on. And I've done this a few times in my career. I said, "Felipe, if you don't stop talking, I'm going to cry, and I won't be able to stop, and then I won't be able to do the show. So as much as I feel what you feel for me, I think you're going to have to put a pause on it, you know, until after the show." And he did. And then we took pictures and we talked and we kept in touch, and not in close contact because I hadn't started doing the 330 and I hadn't embraced social media, and I still had a crappy website and all the other things I started talking to you about nearly an hour ago. And then I was filming my HBO special at the 20-year anniversary of the Latino Laugh Festival in San Antonio. And I'm backstage and I'm putting on makeup with the makeup. I'm getting ready, and I hear ping on my messenger, on my Facebook Messenger, and it's a selfie of Felipe in the third row. He had flown to San Antonio and bought tickets and wanted me to know that he was front and center for my big moment. And here's what's weird, is that right now, because I stepped into the void, I love Felipe. Now I have Felipe, and I have Sandy Jones, and I have Hector Baez, and I have I could go on for an hour and just read names of people. I don't have to read them. I know their names. They show up at 3:30. Margaret Moore, Rich, my friend Craig Davis from Louisville, Kentucky. I could just go on and on and on. And I feel so supported. I feel so loved. I feel like I made such a great decision. And I'm going to circle back around because maybe you're not embracing this opportunity because it's something that happened long before COVID. And maybe I was witness protection comedian because, oh, and by the way, Monica Ray, Monica, I'm just going to say this. Are you the person, because you went to that Zoom show and they posted I did a Zoom show, which I'm doing again tomorrow night with Sammy Obaid, and I'm going to put up the flyer again. I have, but I'm going to put it up again. But I believe, and please, Monica, private message me if you're shy. Somebody just put, I don't know if it was a Zelle or a Venmo. Somebody put $100 in my bank account yesterday, and I believe that it was Monica because the note, it says like where it came from. But what I'm saying is, maybe there was something in me that didn't embrace allowing this contact, this heart connection, this love. Maybe I was afraid. Maybe I was afraid of I don't want to say the responsibility, but love is a responsibility. If someone loves you and you've made them love you, because as an entertainer, isn't that what we're doing after all? But now we have this opportunity to have these, because of social media, much more authentic relationships than, official fan club or fan letters, or I don't know how other people do it, but this is how I'm doing it. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I can't even, it's one of those where you want to kick yourself in the head and say, what took me so long? What took me so long? It doesn't matter. I'm here. You're here. I'm going to keep showing up for you. This has nothing to do anymore with the circumstance and everything to do with embracing the here and now. I want that to sink in because there is an energetic difference. So next Saturday, I have a brick and mortar show. I'm letting you know now that it's a small party for somebody's 50th birthday. We're going to social distance in their backyard, and they're paying me a lot of money to roast this guy. I'll be very, very safe. I'll wear a mask until I'm on stage 6 feet away from everyone. I'm being very careful. And so next week, producer Stanton and I will surprise you with amazing content. So it will be 2 weeks until I'm live again. But the 3:30s will continue and be on point. And I want to give you an enormous amount of love because all I had to do was take one step closer to you. And, I slid the suitcase full of cash, and man, if love is a drug, you guys just keep sliding me suitcase after suitcase after suitcase. I couldn't be happier. I'm the Scarface of love. I could just face down and, thank you. So I'm going to end this show the way I end every show, with a full heart. And I should get my package, Rob. Thank you. Again, what took me so long? Thank you, COVID. Love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can. Thank you. That's my niece.